Chapter 14. Elysium. Alright, let's see how this all shook out in the end. Well, we're still here. The first evening, we talked little about the deal with Endgame, but Lance told me about it that night when the others were sleeping. Good. Because Case's group stayed for a few days. Aww. The deal Lance made with Endgame. No, with Magnus Ulrich. Lance would be returning as the head of the organization. Yes! Yes, 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 yes. That's all I wanted. I know she looks like so bummed about it, but girl, this is excellent news. As the chief member of the Endgame Council. Sort of. It was an unofficial return. Official only to the ones who knew his identity as both king and the original founder of Endgame. As such, he would hold certain sway over the organization. So he was going in my stead. Though it would be much different for him than it would have been for me. And his goal was very specific. Fix the things that were wrong with Endgame, because the organization's goals and focus had become tarnished over the years, and Magnus was powerless to fix it by himself. But with Lance, the founder the council held on a pedestal, things might be different. Oh, they will be. I'm so pleased that that came to fruition. So it's not like she's going to stay here, though. I'm kind of interested, because now Kaysen knows his brother's alive. So there's the potential for good relations between Crimson and Endgame as well, which would be nice. Though Lance had long since decided never to interfere in planetary events again, he was going to violate that personal accord for my sake. I disliked that he was offering himself up. I hated that he didn't tell me. But I'd kept a secret from him, too. And I could acknowledge Endgame's way of doing things was a problem. The way they attempted to recruit me. That Espers were backed into a corner, stripped of other options. And Lance's involvement wouldn't be like mine. He wouldn't go to Bracehill to be sequestered away like Magnus either. That was an immense relief. Okay, so he's not moving this time. That's good. Lance's identity and involvement wouldn't be known to anyone outside of the highest ranks at Endgame either. That wasn't the only part of the deal. Endgame would set up a permanent group nearby to monitor Avalon, ostensibly, probably to monitor us. They had destroyed all record of Lance's location, but they wanted to make sure no one else came poking around. Secrets had a way of getting out, and Endgame wanted to be sure if this one did, next time they'd be nearby to help. That had required the agreement of the Nomos governments. But all in all, Endgame was on good terms with them. They'd been granted permission. Endgame's interest in this area would raise questions from other factions, so their group would be undercover as a Nomos research climatology team. I imagine surveilling this area or anywhere else in the waste had to be boring, but I suppose that was just part of the job. Though Lance would stay in the waste and participate in Endgame from afar, a trip and brief stay in Bracehill might be required at some point. Then additional travel in the future. Kesa wasn't pleased about any of it when Lance told him. For his part, Magnus wasn't at all happy Kesa knew about Lance. Nobody's happy. Good. He'd been so obnoxious when I talked to him about it, I wasn't at all apologetic. That checks out. But keeping others away from Lance was something of a shared interest for Crimson and Endgame, so that helped smooth out the tensions. As Kesa said, Lance was a member of their family. Something like him holding the power of the planetary AI was irrelevant. They had no intention of making him a target by allowing that to get out. Crimson was putting efforts to ensuring everything about this place was kept quiet. Something Kesa was uniquely able to do since he knew his way around Delphine's systems much better than Magnus. So there was a truce for the time being. I wasn't sure how long that would last, but for now it would have to do. Oh. There is something so heartwarming about seeing Deimos back in his old greenhouse. I was like unprepared. Also great dress, Morgan, as always. Look at you. Look at you. He's like he's like back in his mafia suit. Oh man. I'm glad he went home. You know, home. Oh, he went back. Good. How did Karis take it? How? Oh my goodness, I have so many questions.
I'm pleased to see it's still here. I spent so many hours in this place when I was younger.
Yay! Yay! You know what? Nobody else is happy here. Well, Lance looks pretty happy, but you know what? I'm ecstatic, so that's all that matters. I said it.
Some would argue you and Kesa both have spent far too much time here. But I too am glad it has been maintained.
I was sitting on a bench in a place I never could have imagined being, with people I could never have imagined meeting, having arrived via a method I never could have imagined being able to do. It was a strange day. After the confrontation in the waste, Magnus had been pretty clear he didn't want Lance and I in Delphine. We elected to ignore him and visit. Good. After many preparations, and a short wait, as short as we thought we could get away with, Lance's family didn't want anyone to know he was there for obvious reasons, and we didn't want Magnus to know, though I wouldn't be surprised if he figured it out. Meeting Karis Fianchetto, the head of Crimson and the Fianchetto family, was odd, to say the least. He wasn't what I expected. Less tall, less intimidating, less evil. When he saw Lance for the first time after so many years, he had just been an emotional father crying and welcoming his son home. Oh, I can only imagine. It was a very human reaction. And Karis is still alive because nobody bombed the place. Although we never got confirmation he actually died in Case's route, but still. And for a long moment, as I watched them, I had been glad that I could extend my teleportation range to be able to make it here. It had taken a couple of trips back and forth with Kesa to increase my range to the point only one stop was needed with a single passenger. Aw, Kesa offered to be the guinea pig. But it was worth it.
I'm glad I got to see it before we left.
I stood at those words, knowing it was time, though we hadn't even stayed all that long.
I would prefer if you could stay longer, but I understand the need to return so soon. I also could not keep your presence here secret much longer than I already have. And I hold no illusions about being able to protect you if others learn about you what we've learned. Not anymore.
He took Lance by the shoulders and gave him a serious look.
My son, you've endured more than I ever wished for you to. I'm glad you've broken free of all this.
Karis turned to me this time, taking another long moment to study my face. I couldn't help but wonder what was going on in his head.
You are not a member of this family. Yet. Father. So I can't make this an order. But I will make this a request. As a father. Protect him. Please.
Karis always wants his sons protected. I will. I promise. He stepped closer, pulling me into a gentle embrace before kissing my cheeks.
We owe you a great deal, Morgan. You have my thanks for returning my son to me.
A slight smile came to his face, almost a smirk.
For the first time, I find myself glad my youngest son failed to execute my orders. If you had not escaped us, we would not be here now.
No offense, but I'm also really glad he failed. Karis' smile widened and he returned back to Lance.
The two of you have my approval, though I doubt you needed it. I'll leave you now. I'm sure you have other goodbyes to say before you leave.
He hugged Lance again before taking his face and kissing his son's forehead in an oddly tender gesture that reminded me of how often Lance did it to me. Stop.
It will be a while before we can see each other again. But you'll stay in touch this time, yes? Yes, of course.
And there's the bro. Karis nodded and waved a hand to someone near the door, Kesa, who had been watching from a distance. They passed each other as Karis left, but he put a brief hand on Kesa's shoulder.
You did well.
Oh, this is so wholesome. I love this mafia family. Surprise flashed on Kesa's face, but Karis was gone before he could respond.
As expected. I see the two of you are still struggling to relate to one another. That's something I don't expect to ever change. You don't know that. In the end, it doesn't matter. He's pleased you're back. I know he wishes he could announce it to everyone and celebrate your return. I'm just glad he's being reasonable about the situation. Reasonable hasn't always been his strong suit, but this time he has a vested interest in being so. None of us wants a direct confrontation with Nyx. If we acknowledge your return, there will be a powerful cry on our side for retaliation. Father wouldn't be able to ignore it. Crimson would have to respond to what they did to you.
Even the Delphine underworld had its politics, I suppose. And there was also the chance of Lance's current situation being revealed, which would make things worse.
Well, we'll deal with that on our end. You shouldn't worry about it. You have other obligations now. Father isn't happy, but there's nothing I can do about my connections to Endgame. King was entangled with them long before we merged. Father will cope.
Kesa let out a long, soft sigh.
I don't wish to hold you up further. I know you can't stay long, but I hope I can return to the waste soon, provided you will have me and Morgan is willing to bring me.
Of course. As long as you give advance warning so I can plan for it. There was no way I'd be able to deny Lance the opportunity to spend time with his brother, though Magnus would complain. There wasn't anything he could do about it. Not that wouldn't jeopardize Endgame's position and deal he'd made with Lance. Lance and Kesa said their goodbyes, and a short time later he and I were returning to the wastes. I flopped back on the bed with a groan.
Tired?
A little. It's not too bad. I could manage the teleporting situation, but 2 trips in a single day was a bit much. Lance sat next to me on the bed, lying on his side and propping his head up with his elbow.
I suppose you'll be going to Vireo and the others tomorrow.
Well, they think the weather will hold up for a few more days, so they want to get more work done. Since we discovered the cave-in inside the temple, my abilities are now in high demand. Lance laughed as he toyed with the ends of my hair.
Is it enjoyable working with them?
Of course it is. You know, you could come by to check it out if you wanted.
Perhaps I will.
He leaned down and kissed me gently.
Magnus wants me to visit Braceil sometime soon, but I believe I will request them to transport me instead of you.
I rolled towards him, letting my hand rest on his cheek. Are you sure?
I'm still wary of the Endgame Council. Their decisions of late have been questionable at best. The reason Magnus wants my help is to address that problem. However, I think it would be unwise to assume they will not attempt to hold you there if you go. Even Magnus has asked about your joining. Despite Firio's efforts to have you granted official citizenship of Kinisi, I think it would be unwise to trust Endgame not to press the issue. For now.
But you trust them not to force the issue with you?
I think they are aware of how that could backfire. Or at least Magnus is. In the past, I might have allowed them to do as they wished. But now, I have a reason to stand my ground.
Good. Because as much as I would come break you out, that would definitely be annoying. He chuckled and leaned in to kiss me again. It was a soft, brief kiss, but after he pulled away, he leaned back in to kiss me more deeply. My arms went around his neck, holding him close as I shifted my body against his. Alright, I think it's time once again. His body heat flowed into me as one of his hands strayed to my back and pulled me even tighter against him. Every lean line of his body traced the contours of mine. A soft sigh escaped, and almost without thinking, I slid one of my legs over his hip. He let out a soft murmur and pulled away, giving me a smile.
I should let you rest since you're getting up early tomorrow.
Oh, I don't mind staying up a little longer. You know, if you want. He let out a quiet laugh and kissed me.
Well, if you wish.
I leaned up, pressing another kiss to his lips, tongue flicking against his mouth. He echoed the movement, and the taste of him filled me. My hands tangled themselves in his hair, the delicate curls looping themselves around my fingertips. Lance made another soft noise in his throat, this time pressing me back against the mattress, his body moving against mine, slow and sinuous. And I'm out! His fingers slid against the fabric of my top, finding the edge before moving under it and trailing fiery shivers up my back. His lips moved from my mouth, to my jaw, to my ear, each reverent kiss accompanied by soft, urgent breaths that raised heated goosebumps behind them. When we were together like this, Lance always seemed sweetly awed by it all. Deimos might remember what it was like to be intimate, but even now, it was new for the part of him that was king. It was like he wanted to savor each touch, every sensation, every single meaningful look and tender kiss. When he lifted his head and met my eyes, my stomach twisted, a sweet, fluttery sensation that made me reach for him and pull him to me for another slow kiss. I slid his outer vest off his shoulders, then pressed my lips to his throat. When I reached the place just above his collarbone, he sucked in his breath sharply. I scraped my teeth over the skin, and his trembling hands moved to the back of my head. Finding the hem of his shirt, I lifted it up only for him to take over and remove it seconds later. I shifted further under him, letting my lips travel over his chest, kissing each scar and letting my tongue trace a wet path to every sensitive place I'd learned about so far. A trembling groan escaped him, and this time I pushed him gently to the side until his back was flat against the mattress. From this vantage point, I ran my hands down his chest and abdomen, watching the myriad expressions flit across his face. Heat spiraled through me at the sight of him, and suddenly I wanted to kiss every inch of him. Every inch. Girl? I lowered myself to him again, placing a kiss to the center of his chest, before moving lower with each that followed. He closed his eyes, teeth flashing over his lower lip. My hand settled against his sides as I explored his body with my lips and tongue, feeling his body heat grow sharper beneath me. When I glanced up at him again, he was watching me with half-closed eyes, expression brimming with desire.
Morgan.
He said my name in a tone both breathless and pleading. We moved to meet each other again for another ravenous kiss, falling back against the bed in a tangle of limbs. Lance kept our bodies pushed tight together as if he couldn't bear to have an ounce of space between us, as if his entire world was fixated on me. I obliged, wrapping legs and arms around him, holding him tight, overwhelmed by the sensation of his body against mine. Later, we were curled together, listening to the faint sound of wind outside, both drowsy and content. The warmth of his skin was rested against my back, and one of his arms was draped across my waist. I could feel his faint breaths wisping across my hair as he laid his cheek on the top of my head, and I felt immensely content. In some ways, there was still a lot of uncertainty ahead of us, many things that I couldn't see. It was still baffling, at times, how life could take such a drastic turn and somehow still end up exactly as it should be. That was true for me and for Lance as well. Both of us had taken winding roads to get to this place. Winding and sometimes painful. There had been a time when being caught between worlds had been frustrating. It made me feel stuck. But now, being here felt like the most natural and the most right thing in the world. I drifted off thinking I would not want to be anywhere else. Hello, everybody.
According to the readings, we can assume the room is about 54 square meters.
That seems to align with what I sensed when I looked in.
Were you actually able to see any details? It's dark inside, right?
Clairvoyance doesn't care if there's light or not. It's definitely a tomb. There's a stone sarcophagus in the center and numerous artifacts placed around it. Based on the writings, I believe it may have been a priest of some kind. We all were hovering around a screen with images from the inside of the temple. I touched one of a wall behind which we discovered a hidden chamber. You can just see the outline of the door here. It's sealed along this edge, then I think it opens by sliding it left.
Can you make out the meaning of the carvings on the outside?
At the top, I believe it's an identifying text, saying who's interred behind the wall. On the right, it seems to be an explanation of their life. He shook his head, grinning.
I can't believe you can sense all that just from looking at the text.
Well, it would be better if we could translate it. I can only use psychometry to get the general idea behind it. Sort of like a mental image of the point they were trying to get across when they wrote it.
Better than anything else we've had. There's been a lot of back and forth about this new technique of yours. Many people have their doubts. but a lot of others are hoping they can use your conclusions as a springboard for deciphering the language.
The problem is that you can't prove a psychometric vision. Even if I know what I'm seeing, the rest of you just have to take my word for it.
If it helps them identify stronger patterns that lead to deciphering the language, then it's still beneficial.
We're still far from that.
But if they find Espers who can corroborate what you sent from the language, then... We got back the results from the previous scan. Morgan was right. There's a whole new level beneath the ones we've already found. We just don't know how to access it.
I can try to take another look around. I'm almost certain what's down there is a crypt. Maybe a burial site for less important people who worked here.
Well, we can leave that for tomorrow. Looks like someone's here to pick you up.
I straightened, glancing over to find Lance lingering near the opening to the caves, a smile on his face as he watched us. Stretching, I said my goodbyes and left the others to continue pondering over the images and went to join Lance. I hope you weren't waiting long.
I wasn't, but I didn't want to interrupt.
It's fine. We were probably going to wrap up soon anyway.
It looks like things are going well.
We've mapped out much of the interior. It's a much bigger site than we first thought it was. We've identified 3 hidden chambers and an entire sealed level, and there may be more.
I don't mind if you stay a while.
No, we've been at it all day. I think it's time to head home. We have plenty of time. No need to rush.
We'll see you tomorrow then, Morgan.
I waved and called back to him to affirm I'd be there. Of course I would. My official assignment to their team was still pending, but with my citizenship to Kinesi finally settled, it was only a matter of time. Then I'd have no excuse to slack off, so I might as well work hard starting from now. As soon as we were out of sight from the others, Lance grinned at me and pulled me close for a kiss.
I missed you. You left early today.
Sorry. I was going to come back early too, but we got distracted.
I can see that, but I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Aww. Holding hands, it's so beautiful! Man, Lance had the best CGs. I could have just teleported us back, but I think we both wanted to enjoy the walk together. On the way back, he told me about his day. My head rested on his shoulder, and our shadows stretched far ahead of us as we walked home. Our home. Yay! That was so sweet. I loved that route so much. Oh. The only thing that, like, brought it down for me was Morgan being like, I love you. I'm with you forever. Let's have sex. And then, I'm just gonna disappear in the middle of the night. That's a good plan. I'm glad it didn't happen, but the thought and the timing of it was like, ooh, that was the only thing that brought it down for me, but everything else was just perfection. We got the brothers reuniting. We even got the reuniting with Dad. He's still alive. We had like the whole meeting of everybody we love from Endgame, meeting up with everybody we love from Crimson. Yes, even Belly. I'll include Belly in that. Why not? Even though I couldn't remember his name. Sorry, Belly. We got to meet some new characters. Morgan is in her element, doing something that she loves. They get to stay in Lance's beautiful place. He's able to see his family. I would have liked to have heard a little bit more about Morgan's family situation, because we had that in the beginning with her and her mom. But I would have liked, like, one more reference to it in this ending, just to see, like, you know, are they planning to go visit her parents soon? Or one more chat, or something to that effect would have been nice. What else? Is there anything else? I find it interesting that Nyx is not going to try anything again. Although I guess they can't, because now everybody who's anybody knows about Lance, and there's deals in place and shenanigans, but still, I feel like if I was in Morgan's situation, I would still be kind of worried about Nyx trying something at some point, like find some situation, some time where they're able to get at Lance when nobody's around or something, but I like to believe that everything worked out fine, and they lived happily ever after in their beautiful little plant home together. So I choose to believe that is what happened. See? Plant home. Perfect. We did it. Alright, that was Lance's passionate ending. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I certainly did. It was wonderful. Next time we'll start his sweet ending and see how that goes. But yeah. I enjoyed this thoroughly. I will see. It's definitely a high contender for number 1 for me. I got fights. I got fights going on between these two. And Sneaky Ari is in there too. So we got these 3 in here. For sure for me. So I got a lot of thinking to do. But we'll start next time, the sweet ending, and hopefully I'll see you there. Thanks again for joining me, guys. Until next time, I will see you later.